Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Sunoikisis's Digital Classics. This is our second session of this summer term 2023. And in this session, we will talk about the Digital Classicist Wiki. We had a session last fall, in fall 2022 about the Digital Classicist Wiki, but was a different session, a session to show our audience how to use the wiki. But today I'm very happy because we have Gabriel, Bodard and Joel Kalvesmaki with us in our session. And I'm happy because Gabriel and Joel, basically started the wiki and they have been contributing to the wiki since the beginning, and they are still maintaining the wiki and contributing to the wiki. So today they will show us, not only the history of the wiki, but also how to use it, categories, and many other things. And as usual, we have the class outline in GitHub, and you have the link in YouTube. I also posted the link so you can find the class outline where you can follow the session, and you also have many links to follow what we will see today. So, as you know, the Digital Classicist Wiki is a site based on the Media Wiki platform and is a fundamental resource for classicists, by which I mean, not only students and scholars of the classical world, in general of the ancient world. So we know the critical meaning of the adjective classical. But anyway, this resource is fundamental because it collects information on projects, tools, methods, many resources for digital classics, basically, for the study of the ancient world. So you can find many projects about digital classics. But I think we can start. And please remember that you can ask questions in YouTube, and also for students, don't be shy. If you have any questions, please write your questions in YouTube. We will try to answer your questions during the session, basically until 6:15 p.m. Central European Summer Time, and then we will have 30 minutes for discussion. But anyway, we will try to answer your questions during the session or during the discussion. Okay, so, but I think we can start. And Gabriel, Joel, thank you very much for joining us today, especially Joel, because I think this is the first time for you in Sunoikis Digital Classics. So thank you for accepting this invitation and for talking about the wiki. But I think...
Pleased to be with you.
Thank you. So I think we can start with Gabriel. Yes, so...
Yes, thanks, Monica. This is a really exciting session. I'm just going to say a couple of things about the sort of background of the wiki, not so much because we're interested in the history of the last 20 years of the wiki, but as a way of saying how the wiki got to where it is, what the intention was, and what the goal of the wiki is now. I'd also add, as Monica said, this is based on the Wikimedia platform, Media Wiki platform that the Wikimedia projects are also based on. So as I know you've been looking at Wikipedia and Wikidata and related things already earlier in this semester, once in a little bit we come to look at the actual interface of the Digital Classicist Wiki, you'll see you completely recognize it, and you recognize how you go about editing it, and all those features are exactly based on the same platform that Wikipedia uses. So let me just go to my slides a second. Thank you. So the Digital Classicist, which is one of the elements of which is the wiki that we're talking about, is a community. It's a community with a series of tools and projects and activities around it. the community as a whole has existed since about 2004. It first, the oldest version of the website that I was able to find was from 2005. But I think we'd already been talking about it as a community slightly before that. And one of the first things that sort of inspired the creation of this community, which was a group of people originally at King's College London, and very, very quickly a bunch of other people from nearby and from very far away started to expand the community, was that a couple of years earlier, a community called the Digital Medievalist had been founded. And we saw this as a very obvious sort of complement to that, in both senses of the word, to have a digital classicist which had some sort of similarities to it. Now, the Digital Medievalist no longer has, as far as I can see, a wiki of the kind that we have, but they have other things that we don't. They have a journal and other features. But that was sort of the starting point, was that this Digital Medievalist existed, and we thought, actually, that could be something very similar. We had thought, and there had been some discussion about, why don't we just ask the Digital Medievalist to rename to Digital Pre-Modernist or something like that, and that could then include classics. There's various, we could have had, Digital Renaissance and digital various other things as well, all sort of folded into that. And we after some discussion, we decided, and both communities agreed with this, that in the end, if we did that, we just end up with an organization that was called Digital Humanities. And one of the reasons that the Digital Medievalist exists and the Digital Classicist exists is if you like, it's as a gateway for more specialist humanities disciplines to get involved in and to see the value of digital humanities. So while the methods used by digital classicists generally, and the methods and tools used by digital medievalists generally, may be 99% overlapping. They made the Venn diagram may be very close to a circle. Having something called the digital classicist is more likely to get the attention of classicists, ancient historians, archaeologists, Byzantinists, etc., than something just called digital humanities more broadly. Of course, there are massive overlaps. I've just mentioned Byzantinists, and the digital classicist has always included Byzantine topics from the beginning, because it's obviously a very closely adjacent topic to classics. But obviously the digital medievalist also sees itself as including Byzantine studies for very obvious reasons. So there are overlaps between them that we feel are valuable. In any case, we started this digital classicist community, and there were several people who were members of both communities from very early on. And this community involved a couple of things in the very first instance. We started running a seminar from 2006, which is still run today in 2023. It runs just in the summer, in June and July, and there are a handful of seminars that are all online as well as in person. We have a mailing list, the Digital Classicist mailing list, which has a few hundred members on now, and is used for discussion as well as announcements. There was originally, we started a blog, but then we decided to fold that into the STOA site, which was run at the University of Kentucky and is now divided between the old STOA as a host for digital projects, and which is now at New York University, and what was the STOA blog, which is now called the STOA Review and has an ISBN and has a sort of light touch peer review to it, is hosted at the Institute of Classical Studies in London. And of course, from the very beginning, we had this wiki, and the wiki was very much designed to contain information and share information about projects, methods, tools, and other disciplinary issues around digital approaches to classics. And so this is the interface for the wiki. As I said, if you've looked at Wikipedia, or if you've used Wikipedia, you'll see this is a very, very similar interface. It's a very slightly different skin to Wikipedia, so as well as having a slightly different logo up in the top left than Wikipedia does, it has a slightly different layout, so the search is up here on the top right rather than being down here on the left, and things like that. But those are very trivial differences. Broadly speaking, it's exactly the same in software and exactly the same interface as Wikipedia and any other wiki that uses the MediaWiki software. So the wiki started out as a catalogue, in some ways, of digital research relating to the ancient world. And as Monica said, when we say ancient world, we don't only mean ancient classical Greece and Rome or the ancient Mediterranean, but there are also adjacent disciplines, including Byzantine studies, but also including, for example, Egyptology, including other ancient cultures in the world, whether or not they had direct contact with the Greek and Roman worlds. So it's, there are articles in here. They're much less comprehensive, but there are articles in the Digital Classicist Wiki on ancient Chinese projects or ancient Mesoamerican projects and so forth. So there's a lot of a very broad definition of ancient and an even broader definition of classical. This includes not only lists of projects, but also lists of tools. And there's also a category FAQ, which is more sort of methodological discussion rather than specific projects and tools. So this can be, for example, a discussion of, what resources are available for working with GIS and ancient archaeological landscapes, or various other questions like that we can discuss. The community of the wiki is made up of several sort of categories of person. There's a formal group of administrators. There's an editorial board, which is slightly larger, and there are several hundred in principle, but several dozen active editors who have accounts on the wiki and who make edits to the wiki and add pages and correct pages and so forth. We've also very often throughout the history of this had periods where we run sprints, that is to say, where for an hour or 2 hours, every so often, maybe once a month, maybe a little bit less, we get together and synchronously work together to edit pages, either on a particular topic or just generally bringing and doing work on the wiki. So not just letting people edit or whatever they feel like, but let's have a little bit more coordination there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And we also occasionally run training sessions where we invite students to work together, and we show them how to edit, and we do some editing together. One last comment just on why we use a wiki to do this, and what wiki means to us in the sense of when we talk about the digital classicist catalogue of digital ancient resources. And really, this is the value of the wiki is that it leverages the community. It's entirely open, and I'll caveat that with the final point on this slide. But it's entirely open, as in there's no rules against changing anything in particular, and it enables us to collect information that no one person or no one small closed team would ever conceivably be able to do. It's never going to be comprehensive for that very reason, that things change very quickly. Projects come into existence all the time, and projects change and disappear all the time, and these things need to be reflected. But that's never going to be entirely up to date, and it's never going to be entirely comprehensive, but it's going to be a lot more comprehensive than it would be if I were doing this on my own, or if any 10 people together were working on this. Unlike Wikipedia, just one sort of footnote, we don't have any rules against editing the page on your own project or adding your own material to the wiki. That's considered a very useful thing to do. If you have a project that you think is relevant to this, then in many ways you're the most the most qualified person to create the article on that page. Some people prefer not to, and that's fine. Other people can do it. But if you want to, update the page on your own project, that's absolutely fine. It's not there's not a conflict of interest there in any sense. And the final point, having said the wiki is entirely open, there is no button on the wiki to create an account for yourself, nor is there an obvious way on the wiki to request an account for yourself. What you have to do is you have to go to the page for the members of the community, and at the top of that list there are 5 administrators, and you have to track down one of those 5 administrators and email them and ask them to create you an account, and they will. It is entirely open in that sense, but there is that barrier there. And the only reason there's that barrier there is that we've experimented with turning on the create your own account button, and within an hour 10 spam accounts have been created and 100 spam pages have been created in the wiki, and we haven't yet figured out any way to stop that from happening, and so we have this barrier to editing the wiki. So I think that was all I wanted to say really about the sort of history and where the wiki is and what it is we're trying to do with the wiki. I'll talk a bit more in a few minutes about some of the ways in which the wiki works and some of the different kinds of pages we have in the wiki. But I think I want to hand over now to Joel, who's going to talk a little bit more about the community and a bit about the from a user's perspective, how why the wiki, why you would use the wiki.
Thanks, Gabby. This is a very useful introduction, and I've personally learned something of it, something new along the way as well. And I represent, I suppose, a typical user. I've used the Digital Classicist Wiki many times over the last 2 decades, and very grateful that Gabby's put it up, and I hope I can speak on behalf of a number of people in expressing my gratitude for your having taken this initiative. But why? There's a question, I think, lurking, especially today with the launch of ChatGPT. What's the importance of the wiki? Can't you just get this stuff yourself through a web search or the like? Well, I don't know. The jury's still out. ChatGPT is, and our AI models are so young. We really don't know what's going on. I think it'll take a decade or 2 before we really fully understand what's going to happen and experience some things along the way. But I'll say that there are certain things that you can't get from a web search that you can get in something like the wiki. One of my professors said the most scientific way to do research is to browse the stacks of the library. And the Digital Classicist Wiki is that kind of environment. You have a chance to serendipitously discover many different projects you might not have been aware of before. You might not have known what search terms to look for. And because it is focused, you don't have a lot of so-called clutter that you would if you were trying to use the general Wikipedia page. You'll find a lot of things are in Wikipedia that are on here, and a lot more the other way around. There's another strong benefit in that we're heavily dependent upon either social media or our listservs to announce our projects, our tools, and things like that. Those things tend to just evaporate. Yes, there are archives and you can go find them. Yeah, you can go find old tweets and other communications, but really there's no handy public record. And I have learned by force of habit over the last decade that if I have something that I want to announce, if I'm going to the trouble to make an email announcement about it or some other announcement, I should also go to the trouble of making sure that there's some sort of permanent record. And more often than not, it's Digital Classicist that I use to make that permanent record. So I'd say for researchers, anyone who's trying to help promote their projects and make sure that they are known and well understood and seen, there's nothing quite like the Digital Classicist Wiki for the community that we're in. I think you would agree with that, with those things, Gabby, right?
Yes, just one thing. So you have mentioned very important things, and also for my students, we have been discussing these important questions this semester. We have a course on Wikimedia resources, and exactly. So there was a question. One of my students asked this question. So why do we have? It was a provocative question, of course, but why can't we use ChatGPT, for example, today to ask a question and find a resource? Why do we have to use a wiki? It was a provocative question in the sense that was a question to understand more the use of these wikis. And of course, Wikipedia is different. It's a wiki, is open, is a community. So we find, I still have this slide in front of me. So a wiki, a community is open, things change quickly. Of course, the difference is that the Digital Classicist Wiki is a community of people interested in classics, scholars, students, citizens in general. So, but in any case, so we are a group of people with a common interest. Wikipedia, we know, aims at universal knowledge. But the question, in the case of the Digital Classicist Wiki, we know that we have a group of people with an expertise, or at least with an interest in this topic. With Wikipedia or Wikimedia resources, the question is different. And in fact, another question, but is Wikipedia reliable? Well, I don't like this question. In general, for wikis, the real problem is that things change quickly, or at least this is not a problem. But of course, this is something we need to get used to. And also for our students, this is the thing. So I have been analyzing many pages, for example, in Wikipedia, but also in the Digital Classicist Wiki. So this is something, especially for our students, that we have to get used to. So these aspects, things change quickly, but because they reflect the reality. For example, for the Digital Classicist Wiki, things change quickly because we have many projects changing quickly, because we have new projects to add, because there is a living community, a living scholarly community. And this is, I think, sometimes difficult for us. This is something where we don't feel comfortable. But I think this is also the opportunity. So I just wanted to add this comment because you mentioned these important things. And I think that this slide is important, not only for the Digital Classicist Wiki, but in general for many other wiki resources that we can use. The community, which is fundamental, openness. We try, of course, for the wiki, exactly, you can't open your account, but anyway, you can ask for an account and we can provide you with an account with other issues that Gabby mentioned. But I think, I don't know if we have...
Just going to add another sort of perspective on that, which is that if you, Joel asked that question in a much more up-to-date version than I normally do. I normally ask the question, why do you need a wiki when you've got Google? And one answer is, why do you need Wikipedia if you've got Google? Well, if you search for something on Google, more than half the time, the first result is the Wikipedia page. Because that's, and if you ask Google a question, it will not in quite as AI a way as ChatGPT, but it will give you an answer in real language, not just a list of links. And a lot of the time, that answer is just a quote from Wikipedia. If you say what was the such and such theorem all about, it will summarize it using the summary from the top of the Wikipedia page. And if you ask ChatGPT a question, it has been trained on a load of web data, including, quite high up on that list, Wikipedia articles. Not the only thing, but that also, but also lots of other things, which have almost all been created and curated by humans and so forth. So even Google and ChatGPT don't know the answer without resources like this.
Yeah. Exactly. This is why we need to work on these resources. This is where we have to contribute. Exactly.
I think if we got to the point where editing Wikipedia and editing the Digital Classicist Wiki was just a way to provide information to ChatGPT and other people's AIs, I might be a bit less enthusiastic about it. But that's not where we are at the moment. I mean, I think there is also a lot of value in, in consulting these wikis directly. But in any case, the AIs wouldn't have the answers without resources like this.
Yes, exactly. But I think we can move on, and probably so I can remove this if I'm correct. So I'm following our outline, and I think we can go on. And now Joel can talk us about it. You can say something about what is the wiki for. So we have this question.
Yeah, well, I think we've. I was hoping that I had already at least half addressed this topic with
Yes.
Some of my comments.
Yeah, so
certainly,
of course we can. Yes, I'm sorry, and I have to apologize with the audience.
Oh no apologies necessary.
We have a detailed outline, and yes, of course, you answered this question. But I think, yes, and probably now is again Gabriel. So sorry, is my confusion, because then when we start talking about the wiki, of course we talk about many different topics. So I think it's Gabriel again. That's right.
Yeah, I think maybe yeah, we can. I mean, we can come back to some of these questions as well a little bit. I think. I mean, Joel is also in a minute going to talk about the perspective.
Okay.
The perspective of the editor. I mean, he's talked I think already about why you would use the wiki and why he's used the wiki.
Yes.
And so the perspective of the editor, including how do you go about editing. And so what I was going to talk about just for a couple more minutes here is a little bit about the content of the wiki. So here it is, not a slide with a screenshot of the wiki. Sorry, kind of a bit bigger. But this is actually the front page of the wiki. So what I want to talk about really is essentially metadata. And if you haven't come across the concept of metadata before, what metadata is not just the information that is in your database, but the information about your database records themselves. And so this is information that helps you to categorize, information that helps you to organize and sort and record the history of and find results in your database. And so the wiki is, in a sense, a database. And so a page in this wiki has data, that is to say, it tells you about the resource that it's describing, but it also has metadata. It's information about the record that helps us to find things within this. And so the main category, if you like, of metadata is the I've used the word category too many times in one sentence. The main subtype of metadata that I'm going to talk about now is categories. These are, in a sense, tags or subject headings within wiki articles, and this is a long list of all the subject headings that are used in the Digital Classicist Wiki. And if we go to a page, I didn't have a random page open, but if we go to a page on, let's say not that, but a page on an individual project. So we have this project, MayaSim, which is an agent-based modeling project. As well as having the content of the page, it says where you find this project, who was the director of the project, and a little bit of information about the project. It also has down the bottom of the page here the categories. So we've put this in category projects. That differentiates it from tools and FAQ pages, frequently asked questions pages. It's in the category agent-based modeling, of which, as we saw on the previous page, there are about 4 projects in total. And it's also in this category Maya, as that's one of the languages and or cultures that is covered by a few projects within this wiki. And so as with Wikipedia, one way you can say, so okay, what other projects are about Maya? And you click on here and you see, well, actually there's 3 in total that are either about or cover in some way, include reference to Maya information. Likewise, you can click on this and say how many agent-based modeling related things are there, and how many projects are there. Well, there are hundreds. There are 557 projects. That's probably I don't know, about half of the pages in the wiki are projects. So that's one feature of that is one feature of metadata, as it were, is categories. The other thing that I sort of wanted to focus on a little bit is what you get in a typical page, and this is almost exactly the same as the other page that we saw, but just to have a different one. The 3 main headings that we have of what we could call the human readable content in a digital classicist wiki page are the link. This is where you find the project, and sometimes there's more than one link, as there was on the previous. This is a link to the project page. There may be a different link to the database. There may be another link to open data produced by the project, but normally there would only be 2 or 3 links. Quite a lot, there'd be one link which in turn links to all of their other resources. So we don't want to have their entire project sort of structure reflected in our list of links here, but only if they're in completely different places and it's not easy to find your way from one to all of the others. We then have a list of the editors. In the previous page it said director, in others it would say author, in others it may have different titles. It may say principal investigator or something like this, whatever is the most appropriate for this project. And usually that'll be a small short list of people. It'll be 1 or 2 people, in this case 3. And then there's a description. And if the description is a quote, as this one is, it's directly quoted from the project's website. Usually they have an about page, or it may be from their front page. We say when we made this quote, because this quote was taken in 2020, so about 2.5 years ago. It may be in the last 2.5 years. This is no longer the text that is on the front page of their website, and it's been changed. So it's useful for us to say this is when we made this copy. Also, if I open a page and I see that it was the description was taken from the website and was last accessed in 2006, then I might go and have another look, because there's a very good chance that description has changed in the last 17 years. So this is a fairly long quotation from the about page, longer than I think I would have done if I'd made this page, but it's fine. The thing that this page doesn't have, that I think is quite a good idea to have on a wiki page, is not just a quotation from the project site itself, but a description by the editor of this project. Of how useful it is, of how successful it is. So something like a mini review, something a little bit more objective, not just this is our project and it's great, but this is a project, I found it really useful. It doesn't do this, and this thing here which it claims they do, I sometimes find a little bit difficult to use. This is not a description of the project the page that we've got in front of us. I've not used that database, but just a sort of general sort of sense of the sorts of thing you might want to say about that. So it'd be really nice to have something like that on some of these pages as well. This project has all sorts of categories in there, some possibly more useful than others. And you'll see other information down here. It'll say when this page was last edited. It was last edited on the 10th of November, which we sort of already know that, because that's when this description was taken. But someone may have also edited it to correct a typo, so a couple of years later. So that's more recent information. And there's also the history of this. How many times has this been edited since it was created? It has, in fact, it was created on one day. It was re-edited by the person who created it 2 more times, and then it was edited by me later that day. Well, 5 minutes later, in fact. And I'm not sure what I did. I did BQ and cat. I guess that means I block quoted the description and I added 1 or more categories to it. That's my shorthand. So having some description there saying what you did when you made the changes is useful. And Joel will show you that feature in a minute. Other things that you can have in this, look at that, that you can have in these pages is some discussion. This page doesn't have any discussion. You see the link there is red, but But there can be discussion on a page. So if you look at a page and you think, okay, this needs, there's something I don't quite understand, or I'd really like some more input on there, you can put a comment on the discussion page asking for help, or you can say, I don't think this project really belongs in the Digital Classicist Wiki, I want to propose it for deletion. That's the sort of thing you would do in the discussion page on there. So sometimes there's that sort of information on there as well. I think that's the main topic I was going to talk about. I'll talk a little bit more about towards the end how you might get involved in the project. But let's hear from Joel about an editor's perspective on the wiki.
Thanks, Gabby. So as I mentioned, I use the wiki a lot, and I've edited on occasion enough that Gabby saw fit to have me join him. When one edits the wiki, this person finds a lot of conflicting temptations. First of all, there's I'm an editor, and I see many things all at once, and you can edit only one thing at a time, really. So there's an issue about how do I keep track of all the things that I'm seeing in all the edits. The other is that the temptation of scholarship. There's such wonderful events of discovery as you edit and as you read the wiki that you're inevitably going to start chasing strands of research that you didn't know you were interested in until you had this moment. So you've got editorial queues of editorial tasks, queues of research tasks, and then there's always the question about, what am I doing? How do you get one of these headers? How do you follow the formula? What needs to be done? So for my own editing of the wiki, I've developed for myself a 3-window system of editing that I'll demonstrate for you now. You'll find that you will work out your own thing that works for you. That's great. Just take mine as an example of how one could do it. And bear with me while I share my screen. There we go.
Okay. Yes, here it is.
So what you see on the left hand of my screen is window 1. And I think of window 1 as my reference window. The very first tab, there's multiple tabs open in this window. The very first one is a page about editing. And I commonly have to refer to this because it has some syntactic cues that I regularly follow and use. So there's some FAQs throughout the page that tell you how you might need to get involved.
Joel, sorry, can you only zoom in a bit your window? So this is for YouTube. So only, yes.
Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So there's an FAQ of sorts throughout all of this. I won't belabor every detail here. I just will note, however, that the formula that Gabby alluded to before about what your standard page is, it's very easy to forget what that is. But here on the editing page, you'll see the basic template formula, and this is plain text. It's not your normal thing. This is in a style that's called Markdown or markup, depending on what your terminology is. There are equal signs on either side are indication of the level of header for a particular header. An asterisk indicates a bullet point. And then you'll find some other things here, such as block quote, which is you see an open tag here, and then a closed tag block quote. And whatever's in there is going to be treated as a block quote. So this is plain text that is rendered by the website as a more rich text. The other place that I keep close track of are these, because I constantly forget exactly how to formulate my links or my edits. And we'll see these on in a few cases. In the editor window, you will find some hotkeys or some buttons to this, but not every single one of these does have a hot button. And so I find it very useful to have this handy. Second tab of my reference window is a list of recent changes. This will tell me what other people are editing when. So we see today that there's been an edit on Projet Mercury, and that's been about it. And this is useful because you want, if at all possible, to avoid editing the same pages that other people are doing at the moment. One of the reasons why we have wiki sprints and collaborative sessions is so that we can talk to each other and discuss while we're doing edits to avoid conflicts of edits and locking out. There's a live update feature here as well that allows you during a session to see in real time who's editing what. There's the categories page, which Gabby has already shown. That's very important for the kinds of interests I have. And then we get into the to-do lists. There are a bunch of to-do lists. And if you're wondering how to get these links, they're provided in the GitHub account. There's a whole list of URLs for this first reference pane. So don't feel like you need to follow along with the reference there. So here's a to-do list of various pages that are in need of changes. If something's red, it's because it doesn't exist on the wiki. And that's usually a sign that something needs to be done. If it's blue, then it does exist, but it's not been removed from this list for one reason or another. Here's another to-do page. These are pages that need work, so they already exist, but they're known to have some work. And if you're an editor, you may sign up to reserve editing rights for that page or a commitment that you're going to attend to it. There are another to-do list. There's another to-do list here on external lists of projects that deserve not just adding to the wiki per se, but to trawl through those websites and see if the things that they refer to are sufficiently referenced within the Digital Classicist wiki. Here are categories that need work, and as Gabby pointed out, every page has a history or a discussion in history, but you'll find that there isn't much discussion that takes place. These to-do pages actually become, in a sense, our discussion about the larger topics, like will we drop a certain category? Will we add a certain category? These are things that we might discuss among ourselves as editors. There's a list of wanted pages. These are all red, as you see, because some link has been created to them, but the page requested doesn't exist. So it's a very good candidate for starting off some edits. And then there's a couple of wanted categories. This is very similar to the categories that need work page in that it may be dubious, for example, whether we really want to have a category called academic writing or a category called Latin, which could be very useful, but it could also be very, very time consuming to assemble and to any degree of accuracy. And then finally, a page I just discovered only an hour ago is this special pages, which has lots and lots of other interesting things about the wiki, such as pages that are uncategorized orphan pages. Probably don't need to worry about that much because of the style of wiki that we have, but perhaps like long pages, for example, might give you some pages that might be worth splitting, although not all of them necessarily need to. There are some interesting things there I wanted to maybe follow up with Gabby sometime on. Okay, so anyway, temptations. We're going to try to avoid that right now in this walkthrough. So we've got this reference window. Window 2 is our edits. These are pages that I've flagged that I actually want to start editing. And you see I've got 3 of them here. So I happened to have picked this one here, the first 1K Greek project, mainly because strangely, it's a well-known project, but it doesn't have any categories in the bottom. So we're going to try a live edit. Click edit. And I want to at least add the category of corpora. So I go here and I see here's category projects. Oh, it is a project, so I think I can safely add that. So I copy that, I paste it here. Added category. And now maybe nervous, so I click show preview. And then when I look at the preview, I don't see the category listed, but oh, there it is at the bottom. So it looks like it's taking. I'll go ahead and save my changes. It says my edit was saved. And we have the category project. So this page now has its first entry. And let's just confirm that's the case. So I'll go back to my reference page, category, and look for projects. 557 members. Next page. First 1K Greek project. So it's just been added automatically. The categories are automatically populated based upon tags that are put in the entry itself. And just to confirm, I'll go here to the recent changes pages, and I see, yes, sure enough, I made an edit there. Now I could do some more edits here, but I'll move on. I do note, however, when I was trawling, let's see, actually, let's do this one. Okay, so this is page Greek into Arabic. It's a corpus page, got some very interesting things in it. But I noticed, for example, say I want to edit this page, and I will use now window number 3, which is my research window. So I'll open in a new window, and whoa, there we go. Look, arrow 403 forbidden. So automatically I know I need to do some edits with the URL. So I go up here. Well, maybe the parameter is wrong, so I'll try that. Oh, index PHP, no, that's still wrong too. So I come here, I hit enter, and just go to the main URL, and oh, okay, there it is. So this is a real simple change. Now, instead of clicking this edit, I'm going to do a localized edit. I'm going to edit only this section. And I do that so as to avoid, well, it's less clutter, but it also may allow people to, actually, we've already done an experiment. It still locks the whole page, but at any rate, I'm going to go here, copy the URL, and paste. Created URL. Save changes. And there it is. Now, while I'm here, I may want to visit the page and actually think about whether this is all up to date. Rather than walking you through this particular project, I'll just note that when I look at this description, I see there's a reference to a pseudo-theology of Aristotle. And I just want to confirm, yeah, it looks like it's talking about pseudo-Aristotle's theology. So there's a typo here. So I'll do a quick edit. The critical edition of the theology of pseudo-Aristotle. Typo. Minor edit. It depends on, I haven't seen what the threshold is between minor and non-minor edits. Sometimes I click that, sometimes I don't. I will frequently show preview just because I'm never quite sure whether I've got everything right. And it gives me a chance to review my edits with a more pleasant looking format. This looks okay to me, so I'm going to save changes. Once again, we'll go here and just double check. And sure enough, now while I was editing Greek into Arabic, it looks like Gabby was doing some work on the Greek converter, which is great. It gives me a sense of what he's doing. And if I want to ask him about stuff or vice versa, we can talk to each other. Let's see, this third page that I wanted to show for editing, I started off with the category translations, and I was very interested in lots of things. As I say, this is a real candy store. You're going to find all kinds of interesting things you want to follow up on. And I am interested in Greco-Arabic studies. Not that I know Arabic, but I want to know about it and want to keep tabs on what's happening. And I see that this has been about 8 years since it's been edited. So once again, I will open up. Well, let's make sure, first of all, that I've dispensed with this. This is supposed to be my third window. Let's assume that I have, and I'll just edit, close out. So I'll create a new third window, which is Greco-Arabic Studies. And I see that there's this quote from the project, which corresponds to this right here. But as I start looking through it, I see this is a relatively active project. They do have a copyright date 2023. And it's been 8 years since we've done anything on this. Well, let's just check out the about. And as I look through here, there's a lot of interesting information. I could copy the whole thing if I want, but for the purposes of this demo, I'll just note that there's a really interesting feature here, which is indicating an indication of how large the corpus is. That's really interesting to me, and I think it's going to be interesting because it's interesting to me. I think it'll be interesting to other users as well. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go over here to the description and do an edit. I'm going to update things, and I'm going to use the ISO form of dates. So today is June 8th, 2023. We have a block quote here. Let's look at the editor. We've got a bunch of different things. You have bold, italic, link, images and media, references. This advanced pane allows you to get access to a variety of things. Special characters will give you access to extended letters in Unicode, very useful in certain contexts. And then here's a list of formatting keys if you want to just figure out how you do certain tabs. So this right here is doing something quite similar to what in my reference pane I have. I don't immediately see where the block quote is. So if there is one, whether there is or not, I'm just simply going to hand type this in so you get a sense of how some hands-on coding would be. So I'll say added description, preview, and then I see the word currently. Okay, so I can assume that that's going to be tethered to the access. There will be times where anyone is writing a description, either from the web page or in our own words, and we want to say now or at the present or currently. It's better to simply, if there's not a clear context as to when that is, to state the date at which the thing is in its given state. So I'll go ahead and save these changes. and check the updates, and sure enough, there it is. So that in a nutshell is the three window method. Using this, I can pursue these links. You know, I may want to actually study the texts on this web page. And, you know, maybe I'm really interested in Aristotle's corpus and I want to pursue this. And you will find that as you do this work, you're going to get absorbed by the material that you are engaged with and cataloging with. Before you know it, you've squandered an hour or two, and you go back to the change list and you realize, wow, I've made only 4 or 5 changes, but my intellectual life is so much richer than the evidence would suggest. So hopefully you fellow editors will find your own system, and you will find the things that work and don't work in my 3 window system.
Okay, Joel, thank you very much. It was very, very clear. So I think that these 3 windows method is really very, very helpful also for people who has never used the wiki. And we have seen also so this idea, I mean, of course, so the wiki is to aggregate resources about digital classics. And we need to cite resources. Of course, we refer to projects. We can quote, of course, descriptions of these projects, taking them from the projects. But we need, so the idea is to add something more than that. So we also, with my students, we have discussed that also for Wikimedia resources. So this is the idea. In any case, of course, we don't, we have to be neutral in the sense that we don't have to express our judgment, but on the other side, we need to add something more, to summarize the resource, to describe the resource with our own words. So this is an interesting aspect. This is just not for quoting the descriptions that we find in these resources and in these website or external resources. So as Joel said, you have the links in GitHub for these windows, and the history is also very important. We can also always keep track of who is editing what, which is fundamental, I think. I don't know if there are other questions or comments before moving to the last part. So I don't see questions in the chat. I don't know, Gabriel, if you want to add something about this.
Well, I mean, I was going to say the last part is extremely quick. It's really just one question, but I mean, I did just want to say I wish I was as organised as Joel in terms of my sorting my screen out in that way. I mean, I always start editing and then I think, wait a minute, I need the list of topics in front of me, so I have to then open a new tab, which has which then I then open the wiki into, and then click on categories, and I find it, and then I look for something else, and I've lost the categories again, and you know, so it's an admirably well organised way of doing this, which I think my mind is probably never going to adopt, but you should be like him, not like me.
Yeah, because digital classicist wiki is a mine, so the risk is to get lost. And then, as Joel said, the temptation is to add and look for resources. So this is a never-ending process. But we need a structure and we need the limits. So definitely.
Yeah. It's not quite as much of a mine as Wikipedia. Wikipedia is you know, you can totally get lost in Wikipedia. So much so that there are games designed around navigating Wikipedia. You know about the philosophy game?
Wow.
If you go to any page in Wikipedia, pick a random or your page, your favorite page or whatever, and click on the first link in that page that is not either in italics or in parentheses, because they're particular kind of links, right? And then from that page, click on the first link that is not in italics and parentheses, and so on. How many clicks does it take you to get to the page for philosophy? And it's usually It's usually less than 10 or sometimes 20, but you know, it's a shortish thing. And there's maybe one in 10 pages you will never get to philosophy because it'll form a circular loop instead. But otherwise, you just think it's getting more and more general. You say, you know, it's a page for a particular element, and say this is an element in chemistry. Chemistry is one of the sciences. Science is a branch of knowledge, and eventually you will get down to the page for philosophy. But you know, Wikipedia is just so big and so full of links that you know, you can, and it has millions and millions of pages that that you know, you can design games like this where you know, you go through and find things in it, and it's you know, it's fascinating. With that, so we don't quite have that situation, but equally, you can get lost in there for as Joel says, hours if you're not careful. But I mean, maybe the three of us are atypical in that we're digital classics nerds, but but I'd hope we're not.
I get lost with categories because this is our obsession. We need to categorize everything. Yeah. This is something that we love.
We care about data and metadata and findability and organizing and categorization, as you say. Yeah. So I guess, my final question that I wanted to answer is, you've been watching us talking for the last almost an hour, and you're so excited by what we're saying. You're asking, how can I get involved? How can I become a digital classicist wiki editor, and you know, and go in and edit some of these pages and tidy up some of these categories and, you know, improve some of the things that that you've been showing us. And so the answer to that is fairly simple. If Monica, if you could share my screen again. So if on the front page of the wiki you click on this members link down in the on the left-hand margin, you'll find this page which has a list of first of who the administrators. These are the people who can create accounts and can do other things like you know, fix vandalism and ban people and things like that. You have the editorial board, which is a group of people, including Joel, who take an active role in editing and encouraging others to edit the wiki. And then there is the full list of all members of the community. And the only reason that some of these links on here are red is that the people haven't created their own user pages on the wiki to tell us who they are. But all of the editors, all of the administrators have user pages, and so you should be able to go to any one of those user pages and find the contact details for that person, and you can say, I would like an account on the Digital Classicist Wiki, please, and it might help just to say a couple of words explaining that you're a real person and not a spammer, and that you know, that you have an interest in digital humanities and/or classics, and want to contribute, and you know, we will not say no. You know, we might just double check that you're a real person, but we will not say no. We'll create you an account, and we will add your name to this long list, and then you will be able to start. And Joel's already showed you the wiki editing page, which will be a good place for you to start checking that you know the basic principles of editing the wiki. If you've edited Wikipedia ever before, you've got the technical understanding, but this will just give you a little bit more of a sense. And then if you want to start, if you don't have a project of your own that you wanted to add, or something, you know, a page that you found in the wiki that you know needs bringing up to date, that's your favorite resource or something, then again, as Jill said, the to-do list, which is linked in this this wiki editing page, it is down here under which pages need my help. So the administrator's to-do list. You could go to here, and the way it works to create a page in the wiki is you find a red link and you click on it. So we say we're Carte des Philosophes Antiques. You click on that and it says that page doesn't exist, so you're now creating it. I mean, if you get to this page by accident, don't worry, you can always go back, but you haven't created it yet. In order to create it, you first have to put some content in this box. At the very least, you have to say, you know, available, and then the URL, which was on that page, which unfortunately I don't have open anymore because I'm not as organized as Joel, and put the URL in there, and then at the end you'll say save page. So you haven't created it yet. Now I'm not going to create it because on that page it says that Aurélien Berti has has reserved that page because he wants to create it, so I'm not going to touch it. But it's basically as straightforward as that. You click on a red link, and that creates a page with that title. And that's basically how you would get started. The other thing that you have on the wiki editing page is some information about wiki editing sprints. This information here is no longer true. It's not always at 4 p.m. UK time on the first Tuesday of every month. We vary the time month by month, and so we will change this information here to reflect that. But if you follow the Digital Classicist mailing list that I mentioned earlier, there will be invitations to sprints will be listed on there. Or if when you ask for your account to be created, you also ask the administrator to let me know when the next sprint is scheduled, we'll also keep you in the loop. And that again is a way to sort of turn up, have a sort of friendly group who are editing at the same time as you. You can double check that no one's trying to edit the same page, as Joel said. But also, I find having an hour set aside where there's other people around as well, it means I spend at least that 1 hour editing the wiki, whereas otherwise, I might, there's not enough hours in the day, right? It doesn't always happen that you put aside an hour to do something like this with no one to keep you honest, and it actually happens. So if that's something that's useful to you in terms of the way you work, then the sprints are available for that. So yeah, that's about all I wanted to say in terms of how would you get involved. And it may be that in certain contexts, such as if you're a student in Monica's class, you may be put into a position where you're obliged to just join the wiki and make some edits. And certainly students that I teach sometimes are put in that situation. So that's another category, and I hope that's not going to be a burden. I'm sure that's something that you will be delighted to do and will enjoy the experience. But yeah, I think we love to have people involved, and you get credit for this. You can at any time you can click on view history and you can see the people who have edited this page. So who edited that how to edit the wiki page? Mostly me and Joel. It looks like Julia Alico as well, Monica at least once, maybe some other people. But I mean, this history makes it look like I've done a lot, because I guess in 2019 and 20 I did edit this page a lot. But if you went further back in the history, you would see that actually the bulk of the content of this page, that really useful advice content, was actually created by Joel. Anyway, just by the by.
No, well, this is important. Of course, we have to say that it's time consuming. We need time to check resources, to read, to understand, because if we are editing a page about a specific project, we need to understand what is this project. And so we need time, sure, but we can start, and I know that I would like to contribute more to the Digital Classicist Wiki, but still, we can start with small projects, short pages, and one important thing. So many people ask for a new account because they want to add their own project or to edit the project, which is totally fine. This is what we need. But please try to edit your profile and to add something in the page you had. So this is why we have this long list of red names. Again, just a short bio to know who you are. I think this is important. Again, we know that this is time consuming. I always inform new users that they have their own page, so they can add a short bio, just a few words. But I think that this is important. In any case, this long list shows the community. So how this community is big, because we have a big community, considering that in the end this is a small field, and we have many people contributing to the wiki. And then the other thing, so just not quote paragraphs or sentences from the resources you are editing, but try to add your description. I think this is interesting, so this is important.
Having said that, I think a lot of people do, at least in the first instance when they're stubbing out the page, they do just add the URL under available, the editor or editors, and then a quote under description. And then you've got a page, and we can think about improving it later. It's better to have a page than to not have a page. So, so a lot of that, I mean, probably half the time I create a page, I do that in the first instance, and I try and remember to come back to it and improve it later. But I might also be creating a page by something that I don't know a lot about, but at least having something there is, you know, is a start. So don't feel you have to do a lot. We really welcome small edits. If all you want to do is go in and you know, add the category Latin to all those projects that are related to Latin, you know, maybe 5 at a time. You know, find 5 projects that are relevant that are not currently tagged with that, and tag them, and then come back another day and do another 5. You know, that sort of thing, or even just 1. That's still useful. We still want your contributions. You know, not everybody is going to have, you know, that standard contributions. When on this list, you not only see a list of who the people are, but what those people have contributed to. And I don't want to pick on anybody in particular, but you know, Aurelian's a pretty prolific contributor, and since 2010 he's contributed, you know, quite a lot of changes in there. That's I don't know exactly how many that is, maybe 40 or so. But you know, in over 10 years, that's not, you know, that's not a huge amount. That's 2 or 3 changes per year. But you know, you've got some people, you know, who clearly try a bit too hard, who've got thousands of edits that they've made over time. But you know, no one's expecting you to be one of those people necessarily. You know. The other thing we have that I've just noticed is there are talk pages for the individual users as well. The vast majority of those are read, meaning that no one has ever tried to talk to them in the wiki. But there is a talk page for me, and I wonder what it says. Okay, it was just someone leaving me a message. It was sort of like a private message, you know, in the wiki. But I normally I would expect the talk page to be something like, I see that you edited this page on such and such. You know, I think it needs bringing up to date. Could you add more information or something like that? Something about the content of the wiki. I wonder who left a talk message on Ryan's page. Yeah, no, that was again just a private message, but that's another thing you can potentially do. You can say, okay, I can see that, you know, Anna Foka is an editor of this wiki, and the entry for one of her projects, which I find really interesting, doesn't have some kinds of information which I don't know where to find. So I could leave a talk on there asking her if she wants to, you know, enhance that page, for example. And she would probably get an alert that someone's left a comment on her talk page, and you know, would come along and work on that page. So.
I don't see a question in the chat. Also because I think that this session was very, very clear. So maybe, so we still have a few minutes. So maybe just again, a few words about categories. So because we have these categories, they are fundamental. But if a new user wants not only to navigate, but to add categories, to change categories, how can he or she do that? So can we say something more about categories? How?
Yeah,
it's possible to add a category just by inventing. You just use the syntax for category, and you just use whatever category you want to create. At that point, I think you'll get a red light on it, but then you can create a new page, a new category page, and describe what the category is and its rationale for inclusion.
Exactly. So here we can see.
I think Gabby's trying to do one, right?
Yeah. And we miss an E, Athenaeus, I think you want to write. No, after the A. And you have, yeah. I always make mistake. Yeah. Yeah, so this is an example for adding. Thank you, Gabby. Yes, excellent. Yeah, of course. So this is another interesting aspect of the wiki. So I wanted just to show for our audience and for
And
new.
note that it's red. So if he clicked on that red link, he'll see that it requests him to populate a new category page.
But it already has a list of all the pages that are in that category, which is already useful. So even a red link is useful there.
At the head of every category page, there's a brief description as to the scope of that category. And that's the real invitation of the red link there, is to provide some detail on what this category includes and what also it excludes or implicitly excludes. Just so that users have a sense of what should be included or not.
Yes, exactly, because the risk is to add many categories. Of course, we can do that, but we have to think a bit about them, I think. They are not really tags. They are not really metadata or something, so we need them.
Yeah, there isn't really a taxonomy per se of categories that has been predefined. You can add a new category at any time. Joel pointed out earlier that someone had created this category Latin that we weren't sure whether or not we wanted. But it is not quite a folksonomy in the sense, which is a term we use, meaning an entirely crowd-generated taxonomy where people just put whatever tags interest them, and we see what patterns emerge from that at scale. Because if we just let people put in lots and lots of categories and see what patterns emerge, we'd end up with lots of inconsistency. We've already had inconsistency with, categories with different case or with slightly different spelling, US versus UK spellings and things like this occurring in categories. And we try to, rationalize those a little bit more. So it's somewhere in between a taxonomy and a folksonomy, in that we haven't predefined a taxonomy, but we do try to tidy up the folksonomic features of it a little bit. So one thing I would say, for example, we now look at this list of categories, of which there are more than 50, but less than 500. And the ones in red are academic writing. That was created very recently. I'm with Joel in that I'm not sure how useful that is, but someone clearly decided it was. There's this category Latin, which I have no objection to if someone wants to, go through and tag lots and lots of pages with it. And we have this category Athenaeus. Now, I think all of us would probably agree, with the possible exception of Monica, for whom Athenaeus is one of the most important things in the world, that that's maybe not a very, very important category that's likely to come up a lot in this wiki.
Well, also because this is an author, and I think that categories are not for authors or works, but the wiki is for projects, I think. So we can discuss forever about this. But yes.
No, indeed. I mean, we might have slightly more to say if someone made a category Homer, because there probably are a dozen projects about Homer in here. We don't have such a category, and I don't think we should, but it would be something we could discuss. The category Athenaeus, I think that's nonsense. Can someone go in and revert that? Whatever idiot created that category wasn't thinking straight. Go in and take it out.
Also because technically now there is a project there, Digital Athenaeus, and we have the name in the title of the project.
It's in the title anyway, yeah.
Could highlight something not immediately visible, I think. And then we should use categories to say. So that's the thing.
There are four pages in the wiki that you would find if you search for the word Athenaeus.
About Athenaeus, yes.
But I mean, one of those is just a link to the digital Athenaeus.
Yes.
And I don't know what the others are. One's about text reuse, which again I guess is a link to the digital Athenaeus, although it's not a link as far as I can see.
But reference to the same project.
Yeah. And I don't know what Philology Avenir is, but yes, no, I absolutely agree. That's probably not a useful category. I mean, I really only created that as an example.
Yes, unless in the future we want to add something for ancient historical authors and works, but this is
I mean, I can
need
see that wouldn't be an unuseful thing to do, but we'd have to be pretty rigorous about it before it became useful. So I wouldn't object if someone decides they want to do that, but at the moment, I'm going to consider that an unuseful category, and I'm going to go and edit and remove it.
I agree on that. I'm working on this author, but I agree on that because category is exactly. But this is a good example. So you can add a category in the community. We can discuss about that, and this is another important aspect of Digital Classicist Wiki. And we have not only this session, but other moments where we gather to discuss these things. So again, also for our other users, you can add categories. So of course, you have to think about them. And then maybe another person can delete this category, or we can have a discussion.
I would say that the Digital Classicist Wiki is also friendlier than Wikipedia, partly because it's a much smaller community. But if you add a category to a page and it's not a massive typo or something obviously ridiculous, I won't just go in and say, oh, I think that's silly and delete it. Right? It will be discussed at a sprint. We might contact you and say, what did you have in mind for this category? Can you imagine other pages using it? It'll be a much more friendly sort of process, not just going into it. I went to delete it because I knew that the editor who created it was me, and I also know that I created it. Just to prove a point, and so you could see what Joel was talking about happening on the screen in front of you. And I probably shouldn't have done that. Certainly in Wikipedia, I wouldn't have done that because that's considered vandalism. And
well, in Wikipedia it happens, but to be honest, I also had very interesting discussions with editors about adding new pages. So in my experience, of course, there are other situations where something is deleted, but also there they contact you and they ask you reasons for this. But in the Digital Classicist is a different environment.
No, when I say I wouldn't have done that in Wikipedia, I don't mean I wouldn't have added a new category. I mean, I wouldn't have added something just sort of to show someone how it works with the intention of then removing it myself later. Because that's sort of wasting time. It's a public resource. A lot of people use it and rely on it. They use the categories sometimes for searching and for filtering data, and it's messing with it in a way that I think is not really, I think, a good thing to do. The Digital Classicist is a slightly lower impact than that. Maybe I shouldn't have done that anyway, but knowing that I was going to revert it within minutes, and it'll be there in the edit history that I added a category and then I removed it again, which maybe is,
but we had a discussion, so this was so you asked me, so this was a demo for showing you how things really are in the wiki. I mean, we had a discussion about that, and then we agreed on that. I could say, no, I want this category. Please keep this category because this is important for me. Of course, in categories we never end. But in any case, so if you go through the list of these categories, you have a sense, I think, of the kind of categories we need for the wiki. Yes.
Yeah, the list of categories provides a pre-existing menu, and find the gaps that you can obviously spot, and also find places where you might question whether distinctions are needed. And I am very reluctant to do a lot of wholesale changes to any categories, and would prefer to have that as a place for discussion among fellow editors.
Yes, exactly. So before editing, adding categories, please go through this list, which is quite interesting, and also for students, you learn going through these categories. I think you learn what we have today in this field, but also how we interpret our resources.
And looking at the numbers also tells you something new. We have 64 pages that have been tagged as archaeology, 40 that have been tagged Aramaic, only 5 that have been tagged Aramaic. That may or may not be a reflection of the number of projects in the world. It may be a reflection of the biases of the digital classicist community. You might look at that and say, well, actually, I know of like 10 digital Aramaic projects. I'm going to actually add them to the wiki as a result to beef that up. and
we have only one for Acadian, but definitely we need to add more because we,
there definitely should be more. Yeah.
and of course.
We have 8 for Armenian and only 1 for Akkadian. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Armenian should have less, but
Exactly.
Akkadian should definitely have more too. It's worth noting, the one other thing I was going to say once you mentioned Akkadian is that categories can also have categories. So the category page, once you've created a category page, and so it's a blue link, not a red link, as Joel pointed out, you can, just as with pages, you can add a category to that. And it's exactly the same as adding a category to a page. You just add this syntax at the bottom of the page. So you add the description with a sentence or two, and then a category. You don't need to add the pages in categories section, because that is automatically generated by virtue of all those pages having the category Akkadian in their syntax. But this category cuneiform means that when we look at the category cuneiform, it not only tells us all the projects that have been tagged with cuneiform, but also all the subcategories that have been tagged. So the categories, Akkadian, Hittite, Old Persian, and Sumerian, have all been tagged as subcategories of the category cuneiform. And then all of these projects appear in cuneiform. Most of those projects probably also appear in one of those subcategories. That's a slight redundancy, but it does make navigating, I think, slightly easier. And with this, where there's only a handful of them, it's maybe less clear why that's relevant. But if you looked at the category for Egyptology, there are no, I'm not thinking of Egyptology, am I? I'm thinking of Egyptian language. Where's the category? Oh no, I clicked on encyclopedia by mistake, sorry. The category for Egyptology does indeed have several subcategories. So the subcategory Coptic in turn has 22 pages. So it is useful to know that these subcategories exist. So you've got only 3 hieroglyphic projects mentioned in here, of which there must be dozens of digital Egyptian hieroglyphic projects, right? But 22 on Coptic, and these are the subcategories of Egyptology. And one might argue that, well, Egyptology in turn falls in the category of ancient Near East. There's maybe a discussion about whether we agree with that or not. Should it also fall in the category of archaeology? I don't know. That's maybe not all Egyptology projects are archaeological projects. But anyway, those sorts of nestings, I think, can be useful.
Yes, exactly. Of course, many categories reflect disciplines, academic disciplines. And this is interesting because, again, we can have a discussion about that. Today, we have changed to ancient Near East, so we have discussions about these labels, but this is what is happening. So this is the reason why the wiki is changing, because it represents reality. And also our academic world, even if it is slow, it changes. But yeah.
Some categories also act as a sort of a warning, a caveat. So there's a category legacy, where the 81 members of that category are all pages that at some point an editor has looked at and said, this project is dead. This tool doesn't exist anymore. This is not online anymore. But we want to keep the article on it because it's a useful historical artifact, but it just doesn't exist anymore. Or it may exist, but it's broken, or it hasn't been updated in 20 years, and as a result is out of date, or whatever. And so we can tag that as legacy. So that's not something you're likely to search for in the way that you would search for ancient Near East projects, but it's a sort of caveat that you get on a page. Similarly, we have a category for paywalled, which means not necessarily only projects that you have to pay for, but also projects that are behind a login of some kind. Whether that's something that you can get free access to or not, it's still something that is restricted in some way. And so that's a sort of a caveat. There may be lots and lots of very useful projects. We've got open access and open source as categories, but paywall is also a category as a way of saying there's slightly less you can do with this. If you're interested in digital humanities and reuse of data and that sort of thing, these paywall projects probably aren't going to help you.
Okay, so our time is unfortunately over, And so Joel, Gabriel, thank you very much for this wonderful session. It was great, I think, because really we could see in practice how we can use the wiki. And yes, we have to try to be organized like Joel. This is, of course, fundamental. And you have the links in GitHub. So if you want to find those links and those windows. Okay, I don't see questions in the chat, but okay, so now our time is over, and next week, so these, as you know, this semester we have a few sessions of Sunoikis. We don't have a session every week, or at least we didn't have every session every week in the past month, and we have in the end only 4 sessions in total. But next week we have again another session, and we go back to discuss about the Wikimedia resources and specifically about Wikidata. But we will see the example of the International Europos Archive, and Anne Chen will join us to show us a wonderful project for using Wikidata. Especially for images of objects from this archaeological site. And again, you already have the outline in GitHub and the YouTube link and other resources and also references and readings for this session. So our time is over. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Joel, for this session. And also a great thank you to our audience. And see you next week.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. See you.
Okay. Bye. Bye-bye.